The endgame has begun as David closes in on Farouk. But as his allies start getting picked off one by one thing becomes crystal clear. David is completely unprepared for this type of fight. It's Farouk's rebirth day on this week's Legion. Chapter 18. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to this week's review of Legion. So yes, as usual, lots of spoilers ahead. Wow. This was a brilliant episode. I mean, so many great visuals, so many layered storytelling, but really it is the construction of a viable villain and an excellent plan that really just separates this show from so many others. This was just, I mean, again, a brilliant piece of storytelling where all of these pieces and all of these little Easter eggs and all these little moments from the past really come together, and where we think coming into this that our hero David might have a chance. He seems prepared. He's got his chess pieces going into place as he closes into Farouk, that he has a chance in this battle. And the one thing this episode, like I said, really does beautifully is show how unprepared for this type of battle ahead of him. And it really comes back down to our initial kind of like conversation between Farouk and David, where they started doing the little battles, and then it drops down to the whole wrestling match. Even in that, Farouk kind of laughs. We start to see the variations of turning things into smoke and the shifts of perception. But even amongst there, David is still approaching everything kind of like a blunt instrument. Kind of just a direct hit, a direct blow going straight after, where Farouk has slowly worked all of his pieces around, slowly manipulating and taking away all of his allies. I mean, first thing that Farouk does is he gets a hold of Oliver, and he uses Oliver to get a hold of Melanie, and then he uses Melanie to get a hold of Sid, and then Sid falls. In each stage, he is slowly sucking away all of the support beneath David without him even realizing it. And it's just a beautiful layered storytelling, which was so impressive when it has that reveal, which we should have all expected. It makes total sense. The minute we saw last week where Oliver says that she, or that was the week before, where Oliver says she is ours or mine, we should have seen, there should have been that expectation. Of course, Melanie's going to be the new Farouk. That's the face that he's going to use, much as he uses everybody else's face. But it was done so perfectly, so subtly. It sucks all of us in, and the moment it's revealed, everything makes so much sense. It was just, amazingly well done. So, of course, the centerpiece of this episode is the manipulation of Sid. And, you know, in some ways, it's kind of her own fault. I mean, it's understandable to be a little frustrated with Sid because she sort of falls into this a little too readily. I mean, first off, she's with David and she's all about, if we're going to fight together, we're going to be a pair, we're going to do it. And then the first thing she does when she wakes up is go and wander around the desert and goes and look inside a giant hole. The rabbit popping out on the hook. I mean, unfortunately, the first thing I thought of was, it's bait, which it exactly was, but nasty and beautifully done all at the same time. Just as soon as she pulled the hook out of the rabbit, I'm like, get rid of the hook, throw it away, it's going to catch your leg, it's going to pull, it's going to yank, and that's what it did. Well, it went through her hand. Ow. Yes. I'm trying to remember which hand, doesn't matter. And then yanks her into the hole, so it's kind of like we've got to stick together, and the first thing she does is wander out and fall into a trap. And then when she gets down there and runs into Melanie, she should be a lot more suspicious about the whole thing. I mean, first of all, she just got yanked down into a hole from a giant fish hook. And we're in the maze, which I loved, by the way. When she saw that, it was like, okay, we're in Melanie's maze, which I thought was a beautiful continuation of imagery. But when she runs into Melanie, she should be a bit more suspicious. And now I did appreciate her kind of initial confrontation when she tells Melanie, you know, who's all like, everything sucks and man, and Sid was just like, look, you're upset that Oliver left you. You're upset about it. I get it. But I'm kind of sick about hearing your crap. So initially she sort of at least resists against it, but very quickly just falls into it. And again, beautifully done. Very true, like Melanie said, facts don't convince people, stories do. Let's tell you a story. And it's the use of the story which to me is such the perfect manipulation of what is going on. Because the first thing, of course, we see is David torturing Oliver, which, yeah, might be sort of crossing a line, but is in a way an exact response to the lessons that Sid was trying to teach David. I mean, he even goes into himself. It was that whole episode that we are all focused on Sid is, hey, you have to use those pains, those difficulties, those hard experiences, those bad choices. That prepares you. You have to make the hard choices in order to win this battle, in order to save love, in order to stop the world, in order to be together. You've got to embrace that and wear it like armor. Which is exactly what he does. I mean, he tells that to Oliver. Look, all of these experiences, I got to put this on. I'm doing. He is doing the exact lessons that Sid said in order to save, and he's in a way trying to save love in order to save the future. He's not doing this as a revenge just for what Farouk has done to him. All of this is, in a way, is just to find Sid. I mean, okay, he does make the promise, I'll kill you quick if you tell me where Sid is. But that's what's driving him. And it kind of is an interesting point from what Clark's discussion with Sid before is, you know, if you break up and you hurt his heart, you know, what kind of monster could he turn into? Here it's actually, what is the monster he could get into trying to save you, going that distance? So all of that little working, again, it's a perfect manipulation to put David in that position to accept everything that Sid has said, to try and do what she wants. But now, Sid looking at it from a distance, it looks a little different. It looks a little more psychotic. In some ways, it's why you got to stick with the good and not embrace that darkness inside you, even for the best circumstances. And that was the other great thing about all of this bit of manipulation that Melanie / Farouk was doing, is she was telling the truth. In a way. Everything was truthful. All of the scenes that we saw, all of the stuff in those beautiful tables, they looked like giant petri dishes with lights in them. I love them. But all of those scenes, those were all true. Nothing of that was manipulated. Those were all actual circumstances. The difference is they have no context. So Melanie is free to give the context and the descriptors and why this is and where he's coming from and what all this means and how much he's hiding information. I mean, it was just, again, it was a perfect way of using the truth in order to lie. Just a beautiful bit of writing. And then when we get to that reveal, as Oliver is just like, Sid is with Farouk. Which I love. By the way, I loved David going in and just yanking Oliver out and slamming on the ground and dragging him there. I mean, David's very committed to the point. Again, maybe going a little bit too far. But that reveal, when we find out, yes, it's not Melanie, that's Farouk. Makes perfect sense. All the smoothness, all discussion, all the thing. I mean, it was great. And then we get to the next scene where we have her just stroking Sid's hair, you know, just totally falling into this. And again, using all of the past, all of the reality, just sort of manipulating the idea. I love saying that Farouk was the gift, the monster was the gift. The curse is that he's insane. Well, yeah, he's a little bit insane. He's unbalanced. He's been tortured by the Shadow King his entire life. But Melanie really never really hits on that part, focuses everything on David. So that when Sid completely falls into it, again, Melanie is telling the truth in the conversation. She's just stroking the hair. That's their power. The mind readers. They read our minds and show us what we want to see. You can't trust them. You have to trust yourself. Completely accurate advice. Just Sid is misinterpreting that it's not. She's talking about herself. Melanie Farouk is talking about herself. Don't trust them. They can read your minds. They can tell you exactly. You can't trust them. You have to trust yourself. And this is where Sid lost, because she did trust herself, trusted in her man. But now showing all these bits and David having no way to defend himself, no way to explain anything, no way to put everything in context. Sid drops right out until, of course, Carrie shows up and she's just saying, we have to stop him. Farouk? No, David. He's the monster. She has been turned. So, of course, Sid isn't the only ally in the desert. We have, of course, the arrival of the Carries and later on Clark, which was just an awesome sequence. I mean, first of all, Carrie wandering through, tracking the car and getting up to the burnt car as Lenny's left behind, and oh, it was here and it's further on. It's very cool to see. I love the fact that he had bought backup. But then they arrive at the hole. And I found it interesting also that we saw all of the safes now on the, sitting there on the desert. I mean, when we saw those with Lenny, they were very cool, they were very interesting looking. I thought they were just cubes initially. It took me a moment to recognize safes. And all I'm thinking with the imagery right there is, well, with the safes on the head, is that symbolic that these people are not psychically accessible? Sort of their heads, their minds are locked in. That's sort of the idea of the symbolism I was kind of getting. And I love the whole giant, again, hole with the pink plunger on it out there. And all of that was very cool. But then as the guys started crawling out the hole, that just put it over the edge. That's what made this whole bit our Scene of the Week for this week. I mean, again, it's imagery, it was lovely done, but as the guys come up and they start swinging the bolos, it's like, all right, we got a big fight going on. But again, not a direct fight, this is Farouk's, and it's the sound. It's like, there's actually a thing out there called brown noise generators. Similar things of like they use with the heavy sound weapons that they've been using for crowd control and stuff. You get hit with loud enough that the sound, this frequency, can actually make you poop and puke. And I don't know if that's why it's called a brown noise generator. Could be. Scientists make interesting names for things. But the use of the sound to take out the guards, because you're like, what, the guys with bolos are up against machine guns, they're not going to last? Takes him right out, which is kind of perfect because Clark, of course, has arrived with the choke to try and use the frequencies to nullify the powers so that Farouk and David can have an actual battle there, or at least minimize Farouk's thing. So the use of sound to take out your opponent, used on both sides in this episode. But I just love that bit as a way to sort of take out everything, and as soon as you think everyone is going down, Carrie does not. Pulls out the staff and then, boom, beautiful, just a beautiful fight sequence. Nicely done, love the pacing, love the shots, worked really well, had a great flow, and of course, awesome rock music behind it. It was just sort of a perfect picture unto itself. So yeah, that had me pumped, that had me ready to go, and yes, as it finishes up, and they're just like, all done. Ha! And then more just start pouring out. It's like, these are not forces that you're going to easily dismiss. Now, of course, she ends up doing just that. This is the next scene. We can't necessarily put it in our scene of the week, but it was a beautiful little bit. I loved Lenny saving the day. Popping up and taking out those two extra guys. Just ready to give up after, again, whole bodies laying around. It was just beautifully done. But yeah, loved Lenny jumping in, saving the day. Very straightforward. With the gun that just pops out of the case. full. Love that imagery. Anyway, and then of course, other Carrie gets captured and yanked down into the hole, so in Carrie goes. And of course, in the end, Farouk is successful and he does get to his body. And so it's sort of, again, his rebirth day, you could say. And there was a lot of that symbolism throughout this episode. I mean, even as it opened up and we had that cool, I love all those lightning shots. Really do. But that cool camera move into the tent where we saw Lenny surrounded by bones, but laying there all silky in the nice little satiny outfit, rubbing a very pregnant belly. So right there, we have the pregnancy image. We also have Lenny's whistling happy birthday as she was walking up to the safe guys, you know, meditating there around the giant hole. Which, of course, in many of the shots basically looks like a giant vagina inside the desert. Certainly this shot when Carrie goes down and Lenny's talking to her down there, and we just get that kind of like whole bit. Yeah, that's all very, very vaginal imagery right there. So yeah, lot of pregnancy, birth imagery coming on. And I did love that sequence as, you know, Melanie lifts up the egg top there. Egg again, cracking and revealing the inside, does the little breath of life, and she just drops and he just emerges. We have the great light coming up behind. Then he goes and takes out Clark and everybody else. Loved also the Vermilion's statement there. How everything's all calculated, just conflict imminent. Chances of victory, 0%. Retreat! Yeah, it was awesome. And he gets rid of the giant choke, so that's not going to be useful. And then we have, of course, the end bit, the sun rising on Farouk. Again, just beautiful bit of imagery and symbolism right there as it comes up and lighting behind him, and it's just, oh, it was perfect, and does that last little turn to face David, who's looking a little off right there. Not totally in focus, not totally bits. So that sort of sets up our final little conflict, which I love. You know, again, the battle begins next week, and if this is any indication, that's gonna be crazy. All right, and a quick little addendum here. One of the reasons, of course, like I said, that Sid was able to be manipulated so much is that Farouk was able to show her the truth, well, mostly, I think, but keeping everything out of context. And of course, David's not there to defend himself and or explain anything or put it, like I said, put anything in context. But the largest thing there is Farouk's ability to convince Sid that David can't change. This is who he has always been, and any attempt towards change is just a lie and manipulation, that he was a psychopath, and seeing all of this trauma and doing all of this has just made him, this is just who he is. And I love that scene when Carrie runs into David in response to that, because as Carrie finds all of their all messed up, and we have David sitting in the chair, you know, kind of looking similar to that opening little scene image that we saw. He is discussing how good it feels to imagine all the different ways to kill Farouk. It's intrinsic. That's what's worrying him. But he's worried about it. He is thinking about it. He is contemplating that. And that is the bit that Farouk had to keep from Sid. Had to keep from showing that David does think about these things. There is that larger picture, and I think that's going to be the one point that's going to be able to pull him back, or pull her back from her conviction about his inability to change. The other thing on that, and I just want to throw in, while I did talk about that, everything that Melanie showed Sid was true, I'm not entirely sure about kind of those last two images that we saw. One we saw what looked like Lenny kissing David. And I wasn't sure about that, but then thinking on, I do believe something like that happened. I think it was in the dance sequence where she kissed him and he was not really having any of it. It was just something that she acted. So again, putting out of context, keeping things in just that imagery, we don't see David's response, and that is not really something that he wants. Though they do have a connection, and we did have that pregnancy imagery earlier. But who is that last old man? That I didn't recognize. I mean, maybe I'm totally missing it, and if you guys know, let me know what this is from. I thought it might have been Clark for original, like when he was first hurt, but it was all fiery and burnt and nasty, and this looked like some old withered dude. So, I'm not sure if everything was the truth. Is that something we haven't seen? And in which case, if you show everything else 98% truth, real easy to shove in 1 or 2 lies just to push over the edge. But you guys tell me, maybe I'm missing something. Alright, just a couple of small things. One, back to that opening sequence of David there in the chair looking all psycho with the orb and the big Legion hair. That was awesome. Legion in the comics, all very extended and, I mean, not really human looking in many ways. But the one thing I remember is the big hair on Legion sort of stretching everything out in his head. So I love I love that they included that image. And I'm actually curious, it felt almost like a comic cover right there. It reminded me, but I couldn't think of anything offhand. So if you guys know, if that was a comic cover, let me know if you guys know which issue that was. I'd really appreciate that. I'll dive in, but I'm kind of curious on that. Oh, and I also love that Melanie actually called him Legion in that. Legion, the world killer. It was just, it's just a beautiful little moment. Teared me up. I mean, okay, not Legion like he is in the comic, all the multiple personalities and stuff. So, not exactly the same, but still awesome. Lenny's line to Carrie about why she can't jump down in the hole with her. Gotta stay up here for the big payback. Definitely she's looking forward to payback for Farouk. And I was wondering when they had pulled out the big tuning fork is, well, if Clark and Vermillions aren't going to be able to hit that, is that going to be what Lenny is all set up for? She's going to shoot the tuning fork, and that's going to negate the powers. I was like, man, that's a great plan. Well, of course, Farouk, that tuning fork, so might have to do another plan for there. I was looking out through this episode for some more Pink Floyd references. Pulsar77, the comments you had asked about last week's episode, if I had caught any, it referenced Lenny talking about, is anybody out there? And what do you want from me? You know, big Pink Floyd lyrics right there. And I have to say, both last week and in this week's episode, I am convinced that they're using a little bit of the background of In the Flesh in some of the music. Just slightly, just teased, but I've been thinking about it again since last week, and I was catching it in this week. Is this not what you expected to see? If you want to find out what's behind these cold eyes, you'll just have to claw your way through this disguise. I don't know, it seems perfectly appropriate for Farouk, so until I hear otherwise, I'm saying it's in there. Oh, and just the perfect line showing how much David is actually trying to use Sid's lessons to try and save her when he's up against Oliver and says, I'm the lunatic you turned me into, and I'm ready for my revenge. Unfortunately, it was also at that moment where I realized how unprepared he was for what Farouk was trying to do, because torture, not really David's thing. And yeah, it's not really Oliver, but kind of Oliver. I love the little twist. You can't kill me because I'm you. And that little switch there. And, God, again, all the visuals in this episode were just amazing. The Minotaur is not just rolling around in a little doggy wheelchair anymore. Farouk made it a badass. Go and kill all of the weak, which it certainly did. Freaky of it crawling up on the ceiling and then taking out the Vermilion there and everything. It was just very, very scary. But Sid wanting to punch something, I don't think was necessarily the best choice. And I am curious, as she seemed to be down at the end with the Minotaur coming down on top of her, is this how she loses her arm and fingers? Is it bitten off or ripped off by the Minotaur or something? I mean, it's a possibility. I'm sort of curious. I mean, It's tough because these locations are both real and not real. So I'm curious how much actual physical damage can be done. David wasn't actually drilling holes into the actual Oliver. It was just a psychic attack manifesting in this way. When he came out, he was bleeding from the eyes because he's all traumatized in his brain and stuff. But no actual drill holes in the body, at least that I could see. And we also had Carrie down in the hole, wandering through the maze, and then arriving up where David was, who was supposed to be up in the monastery looking over. So a lot of these are kind of half real and half just false environments created by Farouk to sort of suck everyone in, plus the whole craziness in the Desert of Desolation here unto itself. So I'm not sure how much the actual physical repercussions of this may occur. Kind of up in the air, but this could be that point for Sid. I hope it's not. All right, things are getting along, so I'm going to wrap things up right there. I think I hit all of the main points. So, next week, it's the end. It's our 11th episode. One extra this season. Gotta love that. So, we get the big battle, figure out how things are going to lay out. Is David going to be victorious? Is Farouk going to be victorious? Are we going to see the dark future? Is that all a manipulation from Farouk from the very beginning? Which it's starting to kind of look like. He's orchestrated all this from the start. I don't know. Real crazy. Cannot wait to see how it all pans out. So, that's going to wrap us up for tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. If you guys enjoyed this, please go ahead and hit that like button. Thoughts, ideas, comments, we'll put them down in the section below. You can always catch me on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Darren Jakes. Please subscribe if you're not. It's quick, it's easy, it's a one-button press. You'll catch all these reviews. Plus, we got Preacher coming up this summer. We still got a few more episodes of Westworld, and then a big fall plan. So don't miss any of that. If you're a subscriber, you won't. And we'll throw up a couple of our reviews right there you can check out. That's going to be it for me. I'm D, and I'm out of here. Catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.